Of the 18 circuits across the world that make up the 2004 Formula One World Championship, none is as familiar to the teams and drivers as the Circuit de Catalunya near Barcelona, Spain. Hello and welcome to Speed Channel's coverage of the 2004 Formula One season. The Spanish Grand Prix is on tap. This is Friday practice. I'm Bob Varsha along with David Hobbs and Steve Matchett. You see the cars rolling off. There's Anthony Davidson in a new Friday livery, they're calling it. The third car from BAR Honda, a team very much in the news this weekend, given the success of Jenson Button over the last 3 Grand Prix. There's already been one free practice session earlier today. Let's take a look at the highlights. Now, normally we don't expect the teams to rush out onto the track here at Barcelona, a track they know so very well, but they did go out, and BAR was looking strong. There is Davidson, who wound up third in the session overall at 1 minute 16.616.
Davidson looking pretty strong there in the BAR Honda, but look at this. Look at all those cameras waiting outside. Guess who's pit? Yep, Michael Schumacher, who went out immediately. Didn't disappoint his fans by topping the charts at a 1:15.658.
Jenson Button coming off that career best second place at Imola, Italy 2 weeks ago, 5th quickest, but a second and a half off the Ferrari's pace at 1 minute 17.0.
Of course, here's the man that everybody in Spain came to look at, Alonso, who finished second here last year, but he was 7th fastest in the session at a 1:17.
Now, late in the session, this happened. That's the sound of Michael Schumacher, who did a complete lap in one gear. And that's Jarno Trulli in the Renault flashing by on the outside to get back to the garage. No explanation from the pit lane, and Schumacher, after he climbed out of his car, appeared to be completely nonplussed, so apparently no problem there. Michael just couldn't be bothered to shift. Now look at that time, about 2 seconds under Michael Schumacher's pole on this track a year ago, as the tire war between Michelin and Bridgestone continues to drive lap times down.
Boy, it certainly does. Everywhere we've been this year, the pole position's been way under last year's, and this is another example. Just straight away, right out the box, on his first flying lap, Michael Schumacher, 2 seconds quicker than his last year pole time, which is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, that time from last year, 1:17.762, I think, in the F2003 GA Ferrari, and that's primarily down, of course, to this, as you say, guys, this tyre war between Michelin and Bridgestone. Approximately 2 seconds, which kind of pans out what we've seen so far with the pole time falling.
In spite of the fact that one of the corners, La Cascia, we'll see that later, has been changed. It's a lot tighter than it was before, but the track is, in fact, a few hundred feet shorter than it was, so any record set today will be new anyway.
This is Timo Glock, third driver for the Jordan team. They've been in the headlines this week. Jos Verstappen of the Netherlands stopped by the factory near the Silverstone racetrack in England to have a seat fitting. Oops, someone is off. It's a Jaguar. Christian Klein, the young Austrian.
Now that's going to be very bad for him. The car's beached.
Getting out of there.
That'll be him done for the day. So he's going to lose time on the track. He did not do many laps this morning. Did a few, but not many.
Yellow flag is out.
Let's have a look what happened to Klein.
Ooh, just lost it under braking, big time.
Notice the tire marks. The track at Barcelona, very, very abrasive. Tire wear is very high.
Yeah, indeed. Those tyres will be absolutely wrecked. Not because of that, because of that whopping flat patch that he put onto the rear tyres as he locked up under braking.
Oh my God, all that gravel in there too. Mechanic's dream come true.
Oh, terrifying.
Klein crashed heavily on the Saturday 2 weeks ago at Imola. That car was rebuilt and is being used as the T car this weekend. I have a feeling.
I was just going to say, I can't see any yellow flags being displayed there, but right, the camera's caught it right now.
It's the Seat corner. This is about the slowest corner here. First gear, downhill, left-hander. So difficult to brake for anyway, because you are going downhill, and the car's all sort of weight transfers already starting to take place while you're braking hard.
So that'll put extra pressure on drivers Mark Webber and their third driver, Bjorn Wertheim, to get through the work for the Jaguar team. Fernando Alonso, we'll be seeing a lot of him this weekend in his home race from the town of Oviedo, in the small province of Spain known as Asturias. Very much the crowd darling this weekend. We'll be back to practice in a moment.
Speed Channel's coverage of the FIA Formula One World Championship is brought to you by BMW. BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Cars going wide. That's Rubens passing the scene of his lockup moments ago. He was on a hot lap, but he aborted before coming around. While we have a moment, let's take a look at the Porsche track map with David Hobbs.
Well, there you see the layout. Some very, very fast turns here. It's extremely tough on the driver's necks, but they're all very familiar with it. And as you said earlier, it's got a very abrasive track surface. Nearly 200 miles an hour into Elf, which is where you're going to see all the overtaking. And as you sweep up through turn 2 and into that Renault, you can see it's a long, long, long right-hander. A real neck stretcher, as is Repsol. Then it's downhill to Seat. That's where we saw Christian Kleen go off. Tight left-hander. Downhill all the way to Wurt. Got to get this one right, because up to Kamsa there, it's quite a steep uphill. You want to make Kamsa very fast, because a good run down to La Caixa there, about 185 miles an hour. La Caixa now a real sort of double apex left-hander, and a very short job into Bank Sabadell, which is another long right-hander. And then look at that, Europe car in New Holland. As they exit New Holland, they're doing about 155 miles an hour, so you've got to get that one right, because it launches onto that long straight.
Kumasato in the BAR Honda.
That was the Bank Sabadell corner. This is going down to that Seat. As you see, it's pretty downhill to this tight left-hander. It's where Christian Kleen spun, and where Rubens had a problem. Still going downhill. This is to Kumasato. That Wurt. Got to get this one right, because a steep uphill climb out of it.
Oops. Chasing the time set by tester Anthony Davidson, currently the quickest in the session at 1:18.569. But that will come down quickly.
And he was quickest Bob through the speed trap as well, 206.7 miles an hour from that BAR Honda.
Wow. These those last two very fast right-handers. Just look at the speed on this one.
Big lift. And incredibly important that you launch onto this long front straightaway with all the speed you can muster.
Right.
0.6 of an improvement for Michael Schumacher, who goes to P1 in the Ferrari.
But still 2 seconds slower than he was this morning, so one has to assume he's got a lot more fuel on board.
Well, again, as we always say during these Friday sessions, that's exactly the point of it, really, is to try out the two different compounds and constructions of the tyres. First is the fuel load. Try to work out whether to do 2 or 3 stops. Well, I think pretty much all these races this year, with the increased speed in the pit lane up to 100 kilometers an hour on race day, I think they'll all be going for a 3-stop around here.
And of course, as these tyres get quicker and quicker, and obviously one assumes softer and softer compounds and different constructions as well, but you know, you really only want to run your tyres for a minimum amount of laps. But the Friday is a lot of data input going into them, and of course they do the testing tyres for longevity and the fuel consumption and all that other stuff, so you never know what they're doing on Friday, really.
By the way, that car changes direction.
God, like,
just amazing.
Like slot cars, aren't they? I mean, it's just almost unbelievable.
Traction, extremely important around this track, as well as trying to keep the downforce to the minimum because of that tremendously long front straight. But you need to get the traction right coming out of the slow corners. Traditionally, it's always been the left front tyre that sees the majority of the wear around this track.
Well, of course, when you look at the map, you can see it, can't you? Those long right-handers.
Particularly that Renault corner, that long sweeping corner going around onto Repsol. That puts all the load on the tyre. However, Pat Simmons at Renault was saying, you know, you have to take great care as well of the rear tyres, even with traction control, because the guys are so quick to get on the power coming out of these low-speed corners to launch the car that you still get the tyres breaking free of the asphalt.
This is Kimi Räikkönen.
Who at the last race finally broke into double figures for laps completed this year.
And picked up his first championship point of the season. 1.3 seconds off this best time. Michael Schumacher has knocked it down to 1:17.919, with Takuma Sato second and Rubens Barrichello third. We apologize for any audio problems. If you hear an onboard engine note while we're looking from outside at someone, I'll remind you that our pictures come to us from a world feed broadcaster. And I must say, after watching the morning session, whoever's running audio is a
little bit out of step.
Enjoying a Thursday night out on Las Ramblas in downtown Barcelona, perhaps. But boy, he was a little behind the curve.
In the testing after Imola going into this race, Ferrari was saying, and certainly Michael Schumacher, their #1 driver, saying our key concern here is going to be
on board with Anthony Davidson now. This is not Kimi Räikkönen.
No, hanging on to Kimi Räikkönen, Anthony Davidson at the moment. There's Kimi putting into the pit. futuristic grandstand on the left. Although Davis is not worried about that at the moment.
No threat to Gaudi's immortal Familia Sagrada Cathedral in downtown Barcelona, but still nice.
Yeah, last time I visited that cathedral about 3 years ago, Bob, I would say it was about 30% finished, and they began work in, what, 1885, something like that on this. Yeah. It's even parts of that cathedral are beginning to crumble away already, and it is nowhere near finished.
It's a shame.
Now, talking about these tyre compounds and how much grip these things are producing, again, Pat Simmons was saying from Renault, not only do the soft compound actually dig into the asphalt and grip, so you actually get grip by the fact that the tread is digging into the granular appearance of the asphalt, but there's actually a chemical reaction taking place now in the rubber compound, so that the molecules of the track and the molecules of the tyre are actually attracted to each other chemically. So there's a bond being formed as the car drives around once the tyre gets up to temperature. God, can you believe that?
It is. Really unbelievable.
There's so little of contemporary tires, this actual natural rubber.
This is going to be a pretty good lap.
Six-tenths off. Just pipping Rubens Barrichello as Anthony Davidson continues his good work for BAR Honda. I'm surprised more teams haven't opted to put a different commercial livery on their third cars. They're allowed to under the rules. Now you notice the sunshine. Whoa! Left side wheels off slightly. The sunshine has gone away. The clouds are definitely building overhead. It was absolutely gorgeous weather this morning in Barcelona, but it appears to be clouding up, and rain is in the forecast at a couple of different points during the weekend. Current temperature about 65 degrees. Track temp a little over 100. There are the numbers. Fairly high humidity for this part of the world. And the wind's out of the north. Now the wind can also be a factor here at the Circuit de Catalunya.
Well, we saw this morning earlier on the dust coming off the track because there's a lot of woo. And not very far from the Mediterranean here and the beaches, and they get a lot of sand blown onto this track, and of course they come in, they'll do a week of testing, and they'll come back the following week, and the times have gone completely to hell, and everybody says, what the heck happened? You know, I mean, nothing happened, and it's a very strange circuit.
There's Juan Pablo Montoya. He says the Williams team has already done 13 full testing days on this circuit, covering more than 6,200 miles. So you can see why the drivers know it so well. We'll take a quick break and return with more live. Here's another look at Juan Pablo Montoya torturing that left front Michelin. We'll be back. Welcome back to live coverage of practice for this weekend's Spanish Grand Prix. Bob Marshall along with Steve Matchett and David Hobbs with you. And there is David Coulthard with the beleaguered McLaren team, hoping for some more luck this weekend, as thus far they haven't had much of it in 2004.
Well, I shall be going on Wednesday next, the 12th, to the opening of the Paragon, their brand new race centre in England, which I believe is costing about £300 million. In which I understand Mr. Dennis, Ron Dennis, is having an awful lot of input, and I think maybe that's where some of their have been distracted somewhat.
That'll be quite a moment in British motorsport. I understand you're going to be dining with Her Majesty?
We're lunching with Her Majesty the Queen and Prince Philip. The Arno truly locking up. We saw him locking up. Whoa! Oh. Well, that's not a lock up. You better keep going. Don't want to get beached.
That's okay.
Well, that won't be a quick lap.
No.
Change those tyres now, all covered in, because that same, you know, tyre sort of osmosis you were talking about later on, it must pick up that gravel and get dug right into the tyre.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Jaguar fans on your feet. Mark Webber now the fast man of the session. We haven't seen him, but that 117.2 betters Felipe Massa in the Sauber by 7/10.
Very tight.
Yeah. The weight transfer across the car must be horrible.
Awkward little sod to brake for. This is an important one. This is Campsa. We're going to see the new layout at La Caixa here. There's the old corner going up to the right.
So a lot of guys in the first session struggling with that, didn't we? But I think what these guys are doing during that first session is just trying to find just how far they can push the edge in braking there. And that's the session to get it wrong, that first one.
Oh, absolutely. Not much of a lift there for Truly. You notice the engine note there, not rising much down that long straight. They carry a lot of downforce here, considering there's so many fast corners.
There's the Aussie, Mark Webber.
There's the fastest man of the day so far.
Well, the track temperature has dropped, chaps, about 10 degrees in the last 10 minutes. You could see that cloud cover coming over. We were talking about it earlier on. So that should probably help get a little bit more poke out of the engines. Remember, as the cloud comes over and the ambient temperature drops as well as the track temperature, you get more oxygen in the air per cubic meter or per cubic foot, however you want to slice the oxygen up. And that produces a fraction more horsepower. But they'll have it. They'll have all they can get.
I also notice, if you're familiar with the Barcelona circuit, there seem to be a bevy of temporary grandstands built. Evidently, the promoters are expecting quite a large crowd this weekend, and that in itself was a bit of a surprise, because the true love of Spanish racing fans is motorcycle racing, and the Spanish round of the MotoGP Championship took place just a week ago, the extreme southern part of the country, Jerez de la Frontera, won by native son Sete Gibernau. So Fernando Alonso has had a rival for the hearts of his countrymen over the last week.
I wouldn't be at all surprised, Bob, if it's Fernando Alonso that's produced those extra grandstands in a way because of his success around here.
Anthony Davidson continues to pound out the miles. He's done 16 laps, while teammate Sato has done 4 and Jenson Button just 5. And neither of the varsity, so to speak, for BAR Honda are on track right now. It's all down to Davidson. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us for more live coverage. Welcome back to live Speed Channel coverage of practice for round 5 of the Formula One World Championship, the Spanish Grand Prix, where local favorite son Fernando Alonso has become the fastest man of the session. Ooh, Michael Schumacher pulling up behind one of the Minardi's. That was Bas Lehners, their third driver.
And reducing our favorite son to second spot.
Good move by Lehners. Get behind Michael. Learn something for as long as you can.
Yes, you watch this long right-hander is going to duff that gap up enormously. Ferrari having the best aerodynamic passage out there.
Now, don't forget to join us tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern for coverage of qualifying for the Spanish Grand Prix. We'll see if Michael Schumacher can edge ever closer to the late Ayrton Senna's record number of pole positions, 65 for the Brazilian. Again, qualifying tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern, only on Speed, but subject to blackout. Michael Schumacher, 5 victories at this racetrack, and he has been the only pole sitter here at the Circuit de Catalunya in this decade.
Pretty staggering.
Just continues to rack up the milestones. And this weekend, he'll go for his 5th consecutive victory to open the season, which will tie Nigel Mansell, who did it back in 1993 en route to the championship. What do we have here? This is the La Caixa corner, and one of the Renaults just beating that curb to death. Oh, we've got a video overlay here.
Very smart.
Comparing Michael's line to Alonso's, Michael's was the more elegant.
Yeah, well, that's very odd to run over the curb on the way into the corner like that. It's not going to help you grip it as you want to turn, make that final turn to the left there.
There's that cloud cover, look up to the left, top left.
Watch Michael Schumacher trying to improve on his best of session lap at 1:16.9. The Jaguars are going well. Mark Webber hanging on in third at 117.2, now joined in fourth by his teammate, the third driver and reigning F3000 champion, Björn Verdheim.
That's now changed to Rubens from just keeping us on our metal. From Schumacher to Rubens.
And the track temperature is continuing to drop again, chaps. Now down to 90 degrees F with that cloud cover coming over and taking the heat out of it.
It's quite a big drop.
Yeah. You know, you keep thinking about different tracks and how it suits different chassis and different teams, and those with a lot of power but not very good aerodynamics are always going to shine on those high power tracks. But here, really, Ferrari, this chassis just seems to work well everywhere. Low speed corners, high speed corners, power, aerodynamics, brakes. It seems to have it all.
This could be a good lap for Barrichello. He was fastest at the first split. 23 thousandths off his teammates' session leading time. So the Ferrari's coming forward. And I suppose one of the ironic things about this is the fact that Ferrari, unlike virtually every other team in the pit lane, does not test heavily at Barcelona.
There you see the times, very close, those all top up four there. In fact, right down to ninth is all pretty close, really. Davidson now pushed down to ninth.
Sharply uphill here. A wisp of tire smoke off the left front.
See the old one going straight on there. I think that's what caught them out this morning. They were looking down the road to the old corner and suddenly realised that, oh, we've got to stop here about 200 feet short than where we thought we were going to.
Those leaders in the minority again.
The old corner is one of those where you did a lot of trail braking right into the apex. The new one, the whole idea of it is to try and get another overtaking spot. Whether it'll work or not is highly doubtful.
The G loading on the drivers under braking for turn one at the end of that long straightaway is right at 5 Gs.
Remarkable.
Modern brakes are just unbelievable.
And that's over twice the G-force put under acceleration from the power of the engine. You can expect to see, what, 2.5 G under acceleration. And as you say there, Bob, 5 G negative.
Which explains how a Formula One car will accelerate from like 2 or 3 miles an hour to 100 and back to zero again in about, what, 4, 5, 6, 7?
Yeah.
But incredibly quick, and it's the stopping that does it.
Apologize for the breakup there. Drivers beginning to climb the charts. You saw Barrichello go from 10th to 2nd. Truly leaping up. Juan Pablo Montoya coming to the fore. He's at 117.6. 7/10ths off of fastest of the session, but in 6th place. As Jarno Trulli continues on his way, will catch his lap 7/10ths off the session leader. We'll take a quick break and return to Barcelona in Spain. Welcome back to the Circuit de Catalunya, where Cristiano Ronaldo, the former Champ Car titleist, has leapt up to 3rd from 22nd. Practice continues into the final half hour now. Teams will begin to work on their qualifying setup. Kimi Räikkönen, after a brutal start to the season, dropping out of 3 straight races before picking up his first and thus far only point of the season 2 weeks ago at Imola in Italy, is now 5th in the session as McLaren Mercedes continues to work through their problems.
Well, what it seems to be the problem in the Mercedes engine is the exhaust valve seat, which is pressed into the aluminium casting of the cylinder head. That seat has started to work loose, and of course, once that comes out, bang.
Ricardo Zonta up to P1.
Ricardo's done a lot of laps, 20, he's on lap 21 now.
Pick up one of the Renaults. Fernando Alonso sweeping onto the start-finish.
This should be a good chassis around here. It's got great aerodynamics, and of course they've got that new B-spec engine in that they introduced at Imola at the last race. It's got reworked cylinder heads. New inlet system, new injection system on the thing.
But both drivers were complaining after Imola. They both said that the car is very difficult to drive. And I noticed then on braking into that Elf, I mean, the front end was given an almighty twitch. And they both said that they've really got to work on the chassis, and they don't see a quick fix in view.
I wonder whether or not, as we've talked about with Williams in the past, that the aerodynamicists want to run the car very stiff to keep the attitude of the car very level to the track surface, so you don't get any suspension movement. But as with Williams, I wonder if they've just got a little bit too stiff, David, and it's not getting enough chassis roll in it, and they're not allowing the tyres to generate the mechanical grip.
Yeah, that could well be it, because the Williams was very twitchy early on in the year.
Yeah. Again, we saw at Imola at last race at the start of the sessions, Williams running the car extremely soft to try and get the thing to work over the curbs. And of course, the next day on Friday, on Saturday, they'd stiffen the suspension up an awful lot, and the thing worked a lot better. So I think, you've got to hit that fine line. It's always that loggerheads between the mechanical engineers and the aerodynamicists.
Back on board with Anthony Davidson. 22.2 in the first sector. That equals the quickest time of the session thus far.
Oh, wow.
There you go. Bumping Jenson Button, his teammate. So the BAR Honda's now 1-2. This team has come alive in the most amazing way.
I have no idea what Honda have been up to, but whatever they did from the off-season when they were having engine failure after engine failure to today, whether they've just shoved huge amounts of cash and resources at the engines and just told the engineers to get on with it, fix it once and for all, whatever they've done, Honda-wise I'm talking about, they have done a fantastic job.
Well, it was probably one of those simple fixes, I guess.
Yeah,
it's a whole new engine this year. It's a lot lighter, it's lower, its center of gravity is lower, it's got more power. And since those early blow-ups, it's got good reliability as well.
Yeah.
And they've obviously found something. It might have been some sort of oil seal that was giving trouble or whatever, But whatever it was, there's a good view of Lancashire, the new Lancashire.
It's funny how the reputation ebbs and flows in Formula One. Honda was once supreme among engine builders. And then lately, it's been a Keystone Cops sort of exercise. And we think of Toyota and BMW as being the best lumps in the pit lane.
But of course, what was it, 98 when they won 15 out of the 16 races?
In 88, yeah.
And the first, I mean, 88, not 98, yeah.
To the timing line they come. Davidson and Button remain 1-2 for BAR Honda. Ricardo Zonta in third in the Toyota.
Speed Channel's coverage of the FIA Formula One World Championship is brought to you by the United States Grand Prix. The United States Grand Prix at Indianapolis has a new date, June 20th, 2004. Tickets can be purchased online at IndianapolisMotorspeedway.com or by calling 800-822-INDY.
Welcome back live, and look what's been added to the mix here at the Circuit de Catalunya. The umbrellas have come out. Rain beginning to spritz down.
Well, watch Nicky Heidfeld as he comes into the Elf corner.
And if you look at the bodywork on the Jordan chassis, you see that design they've got over the top of the engine cover? Sort of Salvador Dali's soft watches from, if my memory serves correct, the persistence of memory. It's Salvador Dali's centenary this year. He was born in 1904. A local man. There's a big museum for Salvador Dali just in Barcelona. You can't miss it. A huge pink building with bread rolls stuck all over the outside of it.
Ooh, rain on it, a bit of rain on his lens.
This could be a big lap for Heidfeld. He's currently 18th.
This chassis has never been great, has it? But I mean, in the rain like this, it really has shown to be very much a handful.
Terrible third sector for Heidfeld. Of the top 10 drivers on the time charts currently, 9 have improved from their morning performance in practice. The only one who has not is currently 4th, Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, I would say 2 reasons for that, Bob. A, more rubber being put down onto the track, of course, and as the track rubber's in, lap times will begin to drop. But also, see now Flavio Briatore out there ahead of Renault, just making sure that it really is raining. There it is. Yes, it's raining, James.
New daddy Flavio Briatore, if you believe his former girlfriend, the supermodel Heidi Klum, who gave birth to a daughter a day or so ago in New York.
But also,
apparently Flavio is not sure whether to pass out cigars.
Yeah. Or lawsuits.
Exactly. Sorry, Steve, you were probably going to say something germane.
Well, I don't know if it was germane. I was just going to say, I think the other reason that the cars are going a little bit quicker is because just prior to the rain coming out from that first session to now, we've seen the temperature begin to drop and drop. And although the track temperature would have retained a lot of the heat, again, as we said earlier on, with that ambient temperature dropping, there's a lot more oxygen to be burnt in that engine.
What do we have under those tire blankets? Wets, perhaps?
Boy, I don't think they'll be going to wets quite yet, will they?
Meanwhile, Jenson Button pushed back 3rd in the championship by 1 point to Rubens Barrichello. Both of them chasing Michael Schumacher. We'll be back.
BMW 6 Series, the ultimate driving machine.
Welcome back to live Speed Channel coverage of practice for the Spanish Grand Prix. I'm Bob Varsha with David Hobbs and Steve Matchett. We're on board with Fernando Alonso trying to move up from 7th. And he goes to P2, which will delight his fans. Good Friday crowd on a work day near Barcelona. Michael Schumacher back out. The rain not falling terribly hard as the times continue to improve. In fact, hardly falling at all, though you do see it from camera shot to camera shot.
You do get that a lot right at Barcelona because it's so close to the coast, as we were saying at the top of the show there, and the wind changes and just brings in that little bit of moisture. Of course, you've got the mountains behind it as well, which will start to circulate the air, and it flows to and fro.
The camps at the top of the hill where they do tend to go up on that curb a lot. This is down to La Cascia, the new tight left double apex, first apex, second apex coming up, and then it really rolls into the Bank Sabadell corner now, this right hand, the second gear, and then wow, all the way from here almost through to the last corner, flat out.
Talking about the wind and how it affects the cars and the weather around here, we were saying last night over dinner, I can remember changing the gear ratios in my days with Benetton. It was dark when we arrived at the track, and Pat Simmons decided that the wind had changed sufficiently that we needed to change the ratios, and we had a power cut in the garage and had to change the ratios in the car by use of just pen lights only.
Michael Schumacher tossing up virtually identical laps back to back. Good for P4 as Juan Pablo Montoya rolls out. Schumacher still nowhere close to his morning session time at 1:15.658. Be sure to join us Sunday morning for live coverage of the Spanish Grand Prix here on Speed Channel. We'll begin at 7:30 a.m. Eastern with the Acura pre-race show, and we'll be live straight through the post-race interviews where our Peter Windsor will be asking the questions. Sunday morning, 7:30 Eastern, live and only here on Speed, though the event is subject to blackout. Kimi Räikkönen up to P5 in the McLaren. From 15th. Meanwhile, Ralf Schumacher is on a hot lap. Very good second sector time. Good first one, too. So Schumacher crosses the line. P2 for the BMW Williams. Our Spanish Spanish director is fascinated by David Coulthard's cool-down lap for some reason.
Ralph's lap, which say we're watching Coulthard. Ralph's lap is the second and third sector with the fastest sector times of the day so far. So, again, that little fall of rain has not affected the track much at all, has it?
Well, I guess the rain in Spain falls mainly on the grandstand.
There's a little spot right there on the camera. Hardly any suspension movement at all at the front of this McLaren lot. You would think there were no springy medium built into that chassis at all.
Well off. In case you're wondering, BMW engine head Mario Thiessen said this week that those telemetry numbers you see on the screen are very accurate.
Yeah, we were saying in the Imola broadcast that how that works is they take a sample of the frequency coming off the cars from the ambient mic. That mic we can hear now, which is producing the engine note for us. The engineers take a sample of that, split the frequency down and turn that into figures for us for that graphic. Fantastic.
Anthony Davis has gone to the top of the list again, just easing out Ralph Schumacher.
We'll see times in the 15s soon.
Ooh, strange, isn't it?
Well, that was strange.
The sun coming out down this end of the circuit again. You can see some shadow there.
Jenson Button, meanwhile, is on a hot lap as the BAR team looks on. Quickest first segment of the session thus far, and quickest second now at 30.2.
Oh, yeah. There he is.
There it is. Spanish TV crew and the not watching the timing and scoring, evidently.
These two are absolutely transformed, aren't they, from last year?
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I mean, this is genuinely fantastic to see. That somebody, you tell you what this reminds me of, and I know that I was part of that team at the time, but this reminds me of Benetton just surging forward from almost nowhere from 93 to 94.
And Dave Richards, the team principal, says the effects are already being felt. They are getting all sorts of sponsorship inquiries. Jeff Willis, the technical director, is being mooted for other jobs up the pit lane, potentially at Ferrari. And this man, Jenson Button, is on everybody's short list of top drivers of the future.
Yeah, Ferrari now is talking about Jenson Button. Yeah, and Montoya was quoted as saying, you know, I never ever thought they'd be able to do that. Now they're quite clearly the best of the rest, he said. So.
In fact, Dave Richards said when this man, Jenson Button, wins his world championship, he, Richards, will retire immediately. Of course, Jenson Button also said he's going to grow a Nigel Mansell-style mustache in the event of his first race win, and that should be something to see. He leads the session. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The picture says it all. That is Kimi Räikkönen standing behind the wall, stranded on track by his McLaren Mercedes. The car rolled to a stop with no smoke, so we can only speculate as to what the problem might be, but he has evidently lost drive. Here's another look as Kimi prepared to climb out.
Yet again, I mean, he must be thinking, what on earth has happened this year? I mean, going into the season, when they first tested this car at the end of last year, it was very quick, right out of the box, and everybody said, wow, you know, that McLaren this year or next year is going to be just unbeatable, and it has absolutely done zip.
Yeah. Well, as you say, with no smoke or fluids behind the chassis, it's very difficult for us to try and pinpoint what we think the fault might be. It could be that the Mercedes engineers have got an automatic shut-off system to try and prevent an absolute cataclysmic engine failure, so they have some chance of figuring out what the cause was. But that doesn't really tie into my theory earlier on with this exhaust valve seat working loose. I mean, there'd be no way a sensor could detect that. It'd just go bang in about 3 milliseconds.
And we'd have seen a lot of smoke and flame. I think it's either transmission failure of some sort, drive shaft or transmission, or of course on these cars it could be the electronic failure, shuts everything down, or of course hydraulic failure of some sort.
Could well be.
Who knows?
The hydraulics failed when the conrod went straight through the side.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the electric.
See New Holland on the pickup gizmo. New Holland, the name of the final 2 corners on this racetrack. That's a division of Ford, I believe, builder of tractors.
Kimi had made us, when he first got behind the wall there, he made a hand signal like a throttle on a motorbike. He was obviously looking for a lift back, but
get me out of here.
Nothing's arrived so far.
I'd like to see a shot of the car on the crane so I can get an idea of the weight distribution from front to rear axles. And they just started to lift the car up and we lost the picture.
Well, Spanish director not listening to you again. I don't understand it. There they are, the 2 BAR cars at the top of the timesheets again. Ralph Schumacher and the BMW Williams in 3rd spot there. Local hero Alonso in 4th. Barrichello, as we're looking at now, in 5th. Is Barrichello going to be able to improve on his time?
Again, all these teams have 3 sets of tyres that they must use and must give back to the FIA at the end of the day. They can't use them at any other point of the weekend. So, again, as we've said, this is an idea to get the teams out, to force the teams in a way to run so they won't be penalised by using those tyres that they want to keep for the race.
We've got 2 BAR Hondas at the top of the timesheets, Button and Davison, but Takuma Sato is down in 17th spot, who was at the top of the charts, but he's only done 4 laps.
And none in the last half hour. As Rubens Barrichello goes on his merry way, we want to remind you it's never too early to reserve your tickets for the U.S. Grand Prix. This year the event takes place June 20th at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so get with it. Reserve your tickets. Contact the Speedway ticket office at 1-800-822-INDY or check out their website at www.indianapolismotorspeedway.com. And this year there's an added bonus. With the purchase of a race day ticket, you'll be given access to walk the pit lane on Thursday morning. We get right up close to these fabulous race cars. We'll be there for Speed Channel.
Whoa, there's another Jag in the dirt.
That's Bjorn Bernheim.
Last year's Formula 3000 champ.
I would imagine the teams will be watching this. So it is possible to drive out of those gravel tracks.
You got to keep going.
Yeah, that's the secret to it. That's the trick.
There's his motorbike arrived at last.
You've got to keep going and not too much welly either. But yeah, that pit lane walkabout. Oh,
there you go.
Get your hands off the wing.
Oh, they're hanging on it. Let go of it.
Well, I'll tell you why it's interesting. It's interesting to me. I always enjoy that sort of thing. Is because the weight distribution across the axles front to rear is about 50% of the engineering on the cars during the session. Trying to shift that weight balance and the center of gravity forward and aft along the longitudinal line of the chassis, just to try and cure that understeer oversteer effect, to try and perfect that elusive balance that the drivers are always talking about, right, David?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, with these Formula 1 cars, you can just change it so much by sliding that ballast, which is what, 100 pounds of ballast in it?
Well, probably more than that. I would think that McLaren, Williams and Ferrari are up to about 70, 75 kilos, like 150 pounds of tungsten, steel and lead bolted to the underside of the car.
Which they can bolt anywhere they want, right?
Right.
Which could obviously change that important weight distribution.
Which is why reducing the minimum weight of the cars is on the long laundry list of changes to the Formula 1 specification that FIA President Max Mosley introduced just after the San Marino Grand Prix 2 weeks ago. We'll be talking about that throughout the weekend. That list was the subject of an extensive meeting in Monaco on May 4th, and in fact this weekend in Barcelona, the 7 automobile manufacturers who produce engines for Formula 1 are meeting to see what they can do to help cut costs and improve the show in Formula 1.
And of course, the reason that Max Mosley wants to reduce the weight of the cars is to get rid of the ballast, not
flying around
in the event of some big accident where you could get a 100-pound lump of metal scything its way through the crowd or onto the track or onto another car.
So he also wants to reduce the mass in the event of an accident.
Now, the reason it's there, of course, is because the weight limit on the car is 600 kilos. That's the minimum racing weight that the car must be. But of course, the manufacturers have all worked endlessly, tirelessly to get the weight of the cars down to the minimum, and they become lighter and lighter and lighter. But they want then to put that ballast on the car because, as we say, for performance reasons, you want that weight, the mass of the car, as close to the track surface as possible, because that improves the center of gravity of the car. It makes it like a Well, more like a ballerina and less like a drunken sailor wallowing down the quayside. Well, that's what we want when we're talking about this chassis. Here, changing direction, so quick, so positive.
A drunken sailor weaving down the quayside. Well, Mr. Schumacher here. Oh, that's a good shot. We haven't seen that before. Trying to snatch back the top of the shine seats. Ricardo Zonta also turning some very quick lap. Never a moment for sponsorship lost on these guys.
Good look at Michael's Schuberth helmet, which retails for about $15,000, I'm told. But it's one of only a couple of examples out there that meets stringent new regulations for helmets that come into effect this summer. We'll talk about that a little bit more as the weekend goes on. Meanwhile, Ricardo Zonta has set the fast opening segment of the session thus far, a 22-1. He is currently 10th.
I think he's about to jump into third or fourth.
Zonta finished his lap third. The very low 1/16s. Jenson Button with a 15.9, currently the only driver in the 1 minute 15 second zone. And Michael will not improve. He is currently 7th.
He won't get another chance because, as you can see, the session is over.
Boy, diving at that corner with raindrops falling, trying to lift as little as possible. It's great stuff. There's Jenson Button on the left talking it over. Dave Richards on the right.
Also a good day for the third drivers in the team. This is the last we'll see of them. As you see Jenson Button there talking to David Richards with the engineer in the background. Ricardo Zonta ended up third. We won't be seeing him again this weekend. And Anthony Davidson ended up second in the BAR Honda. We won't be seeing him again this weekend either.
Jenson needs a hair care product sponsor.
Oh, that was contact, surely, wasn't it? Just.
It's one of the Minardi's on the right. It's Fisichella on the left in the Sauber. Bas Linders, third driver for the Minardi team. The contretemps. Good view of the pit lane from this camera. I like this a lot.
Yeah.
The Ferrari stops will be fun to watch from this angle.
And the sun is out bright again. No rain, no sign of rain now.
Here comes a Ferrari. The bravest man in the world standing at the front.
You have to be a special llama to do that job.
No mistake there. They were just practicing the stop and go for the pit stop. Ferrari leaving nothing to chance. Jenson Button tops the session. We'll be right back.